The autumn of 1973 in Glendale, California, carried a whisper of change, a subtle shift in the air that spoke of nascent possibilities and lives yet unwritten. Within the sterile, hushed confines of a hospital delivery room, amidst the scent of antiseptic and the faint, rhythmic beep of medical machinery, a new chapter began. On September 12, Paul William Walker IV entered the world, a tiny, squalling bundle in the arms of Cheryl and Paul William Walker III. For them, this birth was more than just the arrival of a son, it was a profound blessing, an affirmation of their faith, and the continuation of a lineage steeped in the quiet dignity of a working-class existence. Glendale, then, was a tapestry woven with suburban dreams and the lingering echoes of mid-century Americana. Modest homes with manicured lawns lined tree-shaded streets, a stark contrast to the sprawling wildness of the nearby Verdugo Mountains. The air often smelled of freshly cut grass, exhaust fumes from passing sedans, and the occasional waft of jasmine from a neighbor's garden. Inside the Walker household, life revolved around the steady rhythms of a deeply religious Mormon family. Sundays were sacred, filled with the solemn cadence of hymns and the comforting weight of Scripture. The values of hard work, humility, and unwavering faith were not merely taught, they were lived, breathed, and instilled with every shared meal and evening prayer. Cheryl, with her gentle hands and eyes that held a quiet strength, cradled her newborn, tracing the delicate curve of his brow. Paul III, a man whose hands bore the calluses of honest labor, looked on with a mixture of awe and profound responsibility. He carried the quiet pride of his own father, a professional boxer whose disciplined prowess in the ring spoke of grit and determination. And Cheryl, too, had a connection to the world of visual artistry, having dabbled in modeling in her youth. These threads of physical presence and aesthetic awareness, though distant at the time, would subtly weave themselves into the fabric of their son's destiny, forming an unconscious blueprint for the life that lay ahead. The infant Paul was a blank canvas, his tiny fists clenching and unclenching in the vast unknown. He knew nothing of the world beyond the warmth of his mother's embrace, the soft coo of her voice, or the steady beat of his father's heart. His cries were pure, untainted expressions of need, his gaze unfocused, yet holding an innocent curiosity that would later define him. The humble beginnings, the foundational values, the unspoken hopes of his parents, these were the invisible anchors of his early life, grounding him even as the world would one day attempt to lift him to dizzying heights. The early days were marked by the simple joys of family, the security of a loving home, and the quiet promise of a future yet to unfold beneath the benevolent California sun. 12 years later, the sun-drenched landscape of California was not just a backdrop, it was a playground, a canvas for burgeoning passions. By 1985, young Paul Walker was no stranger to the artificial glare of studio lights or the precise instructions of a director. His bright, earnest face had already graced numerous commercials, selling everything from breakfast cereals to children's toys. The scent of theatrical makeup and the murmur of crew members were familiar companions. Yet, even as he honed an early professionalism, a deeper, more primal call echoed in his soul, the wild, untamed pull of the Pacific Ocean. His childhood had been a fascinating dichotomy, the structured, often repetitive world of child acting, where every movement and expression was carefully choreographed, contrasted sharply with the boundless freedom he found outdoors. He would spend hours at the beach, the fine grains of sand warming beneath his bare feet, the rhythmic crash of waves a hypnotic lullaby. The salty tang of the sea air filled his lungs, a cleansing antidote to the stale, recycled air of soundstages. He learned to read the ocean's moods, to anticipate the swell and break of a wave, feeling the exhilarating rush as he carved through the water on his surfboard. It was in these moments, suspended between sky and sea, that he felt most authentically himself, eager, exploratory, a true Californian spirit finding early sparks of identity and joy. But the ocean wasn't his only mistress. There was another siren song, one that hummed with mechanical power and the promise of raw speed. The roar of an engine, the scent of gasoline and hot asphalt, began to stir something deep within him. He was drawn to cars, not just as a means of transport, but as intricate machines, extensions of human will and desire. He'd pore over car magazines, his fingers tracing the sleek lines of a sports car, imagining the thrill of acceleration, the visceral connection between driver and machine. Perhaps it was the influence of his father, a man who appreciated the mechanics of things, or simply an innate curiosity, but the seed of a lifelong passion for automobiles was firmly planted. He would spend afternoons watching older kids tinker with their vehicles in driveways, the metallic clang of tools against steel, the low rumble of an engine being coaxed to life, sounds that resonated with a nascent excitement in his young heart. This dual fascination with the untamed power of nature and the engineered precision of speed would, years later, become the very essence of the iconic character that would define his public image. The year 2001 exploded onto the scene with a roar that transcended the silver screen and reverberated across the globe. The Fast and the Furious wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural phenomenon, a high-octane symphony of chrome, speed, and adrenaline. And at its heart stood Paul Walker, transformed into Brian O'Connor, the earnest, undercover cop who found himself torn between duty and an intoxicating world of street racing. For Paul, the role was less of an act and more of an amplification of his authentic self. The cameras loved his genuine enthusiasm, his easy charm, his undeniable comfort behind the wheel of a powerful machine. The premiere was an electrifying blur of flashing bulbs and fervent cheers. The air, thick with the scent of red carpet and the excited murmurs of a burgeoning audience, crackled with an energy Paul had never quite experienced. He remembered the surreal feeling of seeing his face plastered on giant billboards, his name whispered by strangers. One moment, he was a working actor, dedicated to his craft. The next, he was a global star, his face instantly recognizable, his life irrevocably altered. It was a sudden surge into the limelight, a transformative moment that felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. The film's success was immediate and undeniable. Fans gravitated to Brian O'Connor's inherent goodness, his moral compass, and his undeniable passion for cars. Paul embodied this character so completely that the lines between the two often blurred. He was the car-loving hero, the cool, approachable guy next door who could also handle a high-speed chase with effortless grace. Yet, beneath the exhilaration of newfound fame, a quiet struggle brewed within him. He was, at his core, a private man, grounded by his family and his values. Navigating the relentless demands of Hollywood, the constant scrutiny, and the erosion of personal space was a challenge. He felt the pull of the industry's glamorous current, yet he instinctively sought to anchor himself to the solid ground of his true self. The roar of the crowd, the insistent questions from reporters, the endless demands on his time, it was a whirlwind, but through it all, he held on to a quiet determination to remain authentic, to not let the dazzling lights of stardom overshadow the man he truly was. He was grateful, profoundly so, but also acutely aware of the delicate balance required to walk the tightrope between public persona and private reality. By 2009, the roar of engines and the flash of cameras were still very much a part of Paul Walker's life, but a new, deeper resonance had begun to echo within him. He was a seasoned actor, an established star, yet the glittering facade of Hollywood felt increasingly insufficient. The world, beyond the carefully constructed sets and controlled environments of film production, was calling to him with a different kind of urgency. He watched the news, saw the devastating images of natural disasters, the raw, unvarnished suffering, the immediate, overwhelming need for aid. It stirred something profound within him, a sense that his privileged position carried with it a responsibility, a calling to extend his reach beyond entertainment. It was this burgeoning commitment, this shift from personal ambition to a broader global impact, that led him to found Reach Out Worldwide. He didn't want to just write a check, he wanted to get his hands dirty, to be on the ground, to witness and participate in the immediate aftermath of catastrophe. The idea was simple yet audacious: a rapid disaster relief organization, a team of skilled professionals ready to deploy at a moment's notice, bringing vital aid and expertise to communities shattered by natural fury. The formation of ROWW wasn't a celebrity whim, it was a carefully considered, deeply felt endeavor. He spent countless hours in meetings, poring over logistics, recruiting volunteers, and securing resources. The conversations were no longer about box office numbers or character arcs, but about supply chains, medical protocols, and the most efficient ways to deploy aid in the chaos of a disaster zone. He envisioned a group that could bridge the gap between initial shock and sustained recovery, providing immediate assistance when it mattered most. This new path brought with it a profound sense of purpose. He felt a different kind of fulfillment now, a deep, quiet satisfaction that transcended the fleeting applause of a premiere. When he spoke of ROWW, his eyes held a clarity and conviction that was distinct from his film roles. He was no longer playing a hero, he was actively striving to be one, in the most tangible and direct way possible. The smell of dust and despair in a ravaged community, the quiet gratitude in the eyes of someone receiving aid, the feeling of his own hands working alongside others to clear debris or distribute supplies, these were the experiences that truly resonated. He was driven by a deeper sense of meaning and responsibility, channeling his innate desire to help into an organization that would, in time, become a testament to his evolving commitment beyond Hollywood's bright lights. It was a profound shift, a quiet revolution in his own life, guided by a compass pointing steadfastly towards service. Early November of 2013 found Paul Walker in a vibrant, harmonious rhythm, a life in full swing, yet subtly poised on the precipice of unforeseen change. His days were an intricate dance between the demands of a global film franchise, the profound joys of fatherhood, and the urgent call of humanitarian work. The set of Fast and Furious 7 buzzed with the familiar energy of controlled chaos. The roar of powerful engines, the acrid scent of burning rubber, the camaraderie with his co-stars Vin Diesel, Tyrese Gibson, and the rest of his cinematic family filled his working hours. He was Brian O'Connor once more, sliding into the character with an ease that felt like second nature, pushing the boundaries of action, speed, and adrenaline. The long hours, the physical demands, the intricate choreography of stunts, it was all part of the job, a job he loved and excelled at, even as he looked for meaning beyond the frame. But when the cameras stopped rolling, his world shifted to a different, equally vital focus: his daughter, Meadow. She was the anchor, the quiet joy that grounded him. Their time together was precious, filled with the simple, profound moments that define family life. Laughter echoed through their home, the clinking of forks during shared meals, the quiet conversations about her day, his plans. He cherished these moments, recognizing their ephemeral beauty, the warmth of paternal love that filled his heart. He saw in her eyes a reflection of his own spirit, a future he was building for, a legacy he hoped to leave. The California sun, still warm even in the approaching autumn, filtered through the windows, casting long, golden shadows across their shared space, imbuing these domestic scenes with a soft, content glow. Interwoven with these two worlds was Reach Out Worldwide. Even amidst the rigorous filming schedule and dedicated fatherhood, ROWW was never far from his mind. His phone calls and emails were often punctuated by discussions about disaster preparedness, upcoming missions, fundraising efforts, and the intricate logistics of rapid response. He understood the stakes, the fragility of life in the face of natural calamity, and he felt a deep, abiding responsibility to those who suffered. The contrast between the simulated danger on set and the very real, visceral suffering that ROWW addressed was never lost on him. It reinforced his commitment, deepening his resolve to make a tangible difference in the world. He was content, focused, enjoying the fruits of his labor while remaining fiercely committed to his values. His life, in those early November weeks, felt rich and purposeful, a symphony of family, career, and philanthropy. There was a quiet hum beneath the vibrant surface, a sense of everything being exactly where it should be. The autumn air, crisp and clear, carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant ocean spray. He was a man in his prime, living a life that was full, balanced, and deeply meaningful, unaware that the harmony he cherished was subtly poised on the precipice of an unforeseen, devastating change. He had built a beautiful, intricate world, and in that fleeting moment, it felt utterly complete, utterly secure, bathed in the golden light of the California sun. The 30th of November, 2013, dawned under a sky of pale, washed-out blue over Santa Clarita, California. It carried the crisp, invigorating chill of a late autumn morning, yet promised to yield to the familiar warmth of the Californian sun as the hours progressed. For Paul Walker, this day began with a particular kind of energy, a blend of anticipation and profound satisfaction. It was the day of the annual Reach Out Worldwide charity car show and toy drive, an event held at Always Evolving, his automotive shop and passion project. The air around the sprawling complex, even before the gates officially opened, was already thick with the scent of roasted coffee, the sweet promise of fresh donuts, and the distinct, intoxicating aroma of high-octane fuel. He moved through the burgeoning crowd with an easy, unforced grace, his smile genuine, his eyes crinkling at the corners with warmth. This wasn't the practiced charm of a movie star on a red carpet. It was the authentic connection of a man among his people, sharing a common passion. The lot was steadily filling with an eclectic collection of gleaming chrome and roaring engines, meticulously restored classics sitting shoulder to shoulder with roaring muscle cars, sleek imports, and custom-built machines that looked as though they leapt from the pages of a futuristic fantasy. Each vehicle was a testament to dedication, a piece of someone's dream made tangible, and Paul appreciated every single one. He ran a hand over the cool, polished fender of a vintage Mustang, its deep red paint reflecting the morning light like liquid fire, feeling the subtle vibration of its dormant power. The sounds of the event were a symphony of communal joy, the low rumble of engines being idled, the excited chatter of enthusiasts comparing notes, the intermittent bursts of laughter, and the steady hum of conversation. Children, their faces bright with anticipation, clutched their donated toys, eager to contribute to the cause. Paul paused, kneeling to greet a small boy clutching a brightly wrapped action figure, his voice soft, eyes meeting the child's with genuine interest. "That's a great toy, buddy," he murmured, "someone's going to be very happy." It was moments like these, far removed from the dazzling artifice of Hollywood, that truly resonated with him. This was his world, built on tangible connections and shared purpose. His own psychological state was one of profound engagement, a benevolent energy radiating outwards. He felt a deep sense of contentment watching the event unfold, seeing the tangible impact of his vision for ROWW. Every donated toy, every conversation about disaster relief, every shared laugh over a particularly impressive engine block, it all affirmed his belief in the power of community and compassion. He moved from group to group, shaking hands, signing autographs, posing for photos, yet always steering the conversation back to the charity, to the real-world impact of their collective efforts. The sun, now climbing higher, began to warm his shoulders, casting long, dancing shadows across the asphalt. He inhaled deeply, the crisp air carrying a complex blend of exhaust fumes, coffee, and the faint, sweet scent of blooming jasmine from a nearby garden. This day felt good, purposeful, a vibrant culmination of his passions and his commitments. He saw friends, colleagues, and fans, all united by a common thread of generosity and a love for automobiles. It was a seemingly ordinary Saturday, imbued with an extraordinary sense of purpose and joy, a perfect reflection of the man himself. As the morning drifted into the mid-afternoon, the festive atmosphere at Always Evolving showed no signs of abating. The sun, now a brilliant, buttery yellow, beat down with a comfortable warmth, coaxing people to linger, to continue their conversations, to soak in the camaraderie. Paul found himself drawn to a particular corner of the lot, where a sleek, silver Porsche Carrera GT sat, gleaming with an almost predatory elegance. It was a car that commanded attention, its low-slung profile and aggressive lines hinting at the raw power coiled beneath its composite bodywork. This wasn't just any car, it was one that Roger Rodas, his friend, financial advisor, and business partner, frequently drove and meticulously maintained. Roger stood beside the vehicle, a familiar, easy smile on his face, animatedly discussing its finer points with a small group of enthusiasts. He was a man who understood cars with an almost intuitive depth, his knowledge encyclopedic, his passion as fervent as Paul's own. Paul joined the circle, a natural gravitation towards a shared passion. The air around the Porsche felt charged, not just with the general buzz of the car show, but with a specific reverence for this particular machine. Its engine, even at rest, seemed to hum with latent energy, a deep, guttural promise of speed. Paul leaned against a nearby display table, listening as Roger explained the car's unique engineering, the precise balance of power and handling that made the Carrera GT legendary, and notoriously challenging. He watched Roger's hands as he gestured, pointing out subtle details, the way the light caught the carbon fiber accents. There was a shared language between them, an unspoken understanding forged over years of friendship and countless hours spent discussing everything from business ventures to the nuances of engine performance. A fan approached, shyly asking a question about the car's top speed, and Roger answered with a patient, knowledgeable air. Paul caught Roger's eye, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The conversation then shifted, becoming more casual, more personal. "She's running beautifully today, Paul," Roger remarked, patting the hood gently, almost affectionately. "Smooth as silk." Paul nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. He knew the car well, had been in it before, had felt its exhilarating surge of power. The idea, then, seemed to materialize spontaneously, a natural extension of their shared enthusiasm, a casual impulse born of the moment. "Feel like taking her for a quick spin, Raj?" Paul asked, his voice low, almost a suggestion rather than a direct request. "Just a quick run around the block, clear her throat a bit." Roger's eyes lit up, a mirror of Paul's own enthusiasm. "You read my mind, brother," he chuckled, already reaching for the keys. The decision hung in the air for a fleeting moment, a casual, almost insignificant choice in the grand scheme of the day, yet tinged, in retrospect, with a subtle, almost imperceptible undercurrent of impending fate. They were relaxed, trusting, enjoying the moment with a close friend, completely oblivious to the shadow that had begun to stretch long and thin across the bright California afternoon. The shared passion for automobiles, a bond that had strengthened their friendship over the years, was now guiding them towards an unforeseen precipice, cloaked in the innocent desire for a brief, exhilarating drive. At precisely 3:30 in the afternoon, the Porsche Carrera GT, a silver arrow of engineering marvel, began to stir from its elegant repose. The sounds of the charity event, still vibrant with life and laughter, seemed to recede, becoming a distant murmur as Roger Rodas unlatched the driver's side door. The click was crisp, definitive, a small punctuation mark in the ongoing narrative of the day. Paul Walker slid into the passenger seat, the leather cool and firm beneath him, the cabin enveloping them in an intimate cocoon of high-performance luxury. He fastened his seatbelt with a practiced motion, the familiar click echoing the one Roger had made moments before. There was a comfortable silence between them, a shared anticipation that needed no words. Roger inserted the key, a small, almost insignificant metallic object, into the ignition. The engine coughed once, a deep, almost guttural growl, then settled into a steady, powerful hum. It was a sound that spoke of raw, untamed horsepower, a beast barely contained. The vibration was subtle, a low thrumming beneath their seats, a living pulse that resonated through the very chassis of the car. Paul leaned back, a relaxed smile on his face, his gaze sweeping over the dashboard, the array of dials and gauges that hinted at the machine's incredible capabilities. He trusted Roger implicitly, not just as a friend, but as a driver. Roger was meticulous, disciplined, and intimately familiar with the nuances of this particular vehicle. There was no apprehension, only the familiar, routine pleasure of a short, exhilarating drive with a close friend. With a gentle press of the accelerator, the Porsche eased forward, gliding almost silently at first, then picking up speed with an effortless grace. The tires whispered against the asphalt as they navigated the crowded parking lot, a stark contrast to the roar that was to come. They waved to a few lingering friends, a casual nod, a quick smile, unaware that these would be their final farewells. The sun, now dipping slightly in the western sky, cast long, golden shadows, painting the scene with a deceptive tranquility. As they exited the lot and turned onto the open road, the hum of the powerful engine began to swell, filling the air with its insistent thrum. The world outside the windows began to blur, the familiar landscape of Santa Clarita transforming into streaks of color and light. The wind, which had been a gentle caress moments before, now rushed past the car with a growing intensity, a harbinger of the speed they were rapidly attaining. Paul felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the exhilarating pull of acceleration, a sensation he had chased and perfected on screen for years. This was pure, unadulterated speed, a visceral connection to the machine that he loved. Their intention was simple: a brief drive around the block, a quick burst of speed, a chance to stretch the Carrera GT's legs before returning to the lingering warmth of the charity event. It was a moment suspended between the past and an unimaginable future, a brief interlude of quiet exhilaration, a sense of routine pleasure that masked the terrifying precipice they were unknowingly approaching. The powerful engine's insistent song filled the air, a prelude to a storm that would shatter the serene afternoon. Then, at precisely 3:40 in the afternoon, on Hercules Street in Santa Clarita, the world fractured. The serene hum of the powerful Porsche Carrera GT abruptly transformed into a shriek, a metallic scream of tortured rubber against unforgiving asphalt. The vehicle, a silver blur of speed, was no longer a graceful extension of human will but a wild, thrashing beast, suddenly and terrifyingly out of control. The initial screech of tires, long and agonizing, tore through the peaceful afternoon air, a sound that would forever be etched into the memory of those who heard it. Witnesses, drawn by the sudden, violent noise, watched in horrified disbelief as the car swerved, a chaotic dance of metal and momentum. It seemed to defy the laws of physics, skidding sideways, then veering with a sickening lurch towards the roadside. Time, for those few agonizing seconds, seemed to stretch, elastic and agonizingly slow, yet simultaneously compressed into an unbearable flash. The impact was cataclysmic. The Porsche struck a concrete light pole with a sickening, bone-jarring thud that reverberated through the very ground. The pole, a sturdy sentinel of the street, splintered and groaned, its integrity instantly compromised. Then, with a horrifying, relentless momentum, the car slammed into several mature trees that lined the street. The sound was a symphony of destruction, the shattering of glass, the tearing of metal, the splintering of wood, each impact a hammer blow against the afternoon's peace. The air filled instantaneously with the acrid scent of burning rubber, pulverized leaves, and the metallic tang of crushed steel. Before the echoes of the collisions had even fully faded, a flash of orange light erupted, a sudden, shocking bloom of fire that consumed the rear of the vehicle. It was as if the car itself had spontaneously combusted, a fiery phoenix in reverse, collapsing into itself. The flames, initially tentative, quickly swelled, licking hungrily at the wreckage, turning the sleek silver machine into a raging inferno. Thick, black smoke billowed upwards, a dark, choking plume against the pale blue sky, signaling an unimaginable tragedy. For Paul Walker and Roger Rodas, trapped within the rapidly disintegrating confines of the vehicle, the experience was an instantaneous descent into terror and confusion. The sudden, violent loss of control, the sickening lurch, the overwhelming force of the impacts, it would have been a blur of sensory overload, a horrific symphony of sound and sensation. In that abrupt cessation of life, there was only the raw, primal instinct of survival, quickly overwhelmed by the crushing, indiscriminate power of the crash. The world, which had been so vibrant and full of promise moments before, had become a maelstrom of violence and fire, shattering the peaceful afternoon into a million agonizing pieces. The horror was absolute, immediate, and utterly inescapable. The immediate aftermath was a scene ripped from a nightmare, a chaotic tableau of smoke, fire, and disbelief. The thick, black plume of smoke rose rapidly into the sky, a stark, undeniable beacon of tragedy visible for miles. The air, already heavy with the acrid stench of burning rubber and gasoline, now carried the sickening undertones of scorched metal and, horrifyingly, something far more organic. The heat radiating from the inferno was intense, a physical force that pushed back at those who dared to approach, singeing hair and stinging eyes. Within moments, the first desperate shouts began to pierce the stunned silence that had followed the catastrophic impacts. Antonio Holmes, a friend of both Paul and Roger, had been at the charity event just a block away. The sounds of the crash had reached him as a series of thunderous concussions, followed by the unmistakable roar of an explosion. His heart, already pounding with a dreadful premonition, seized in his chest. He, along with Jim Thorpe, an automotive expert who had also been at the event, and several other horrified onlookers, sprinted towards the billowing smoke. What they found defied comprehension. The Porsche Carrera GT, once a symbol of sleek power, was now a mangled, unrecognizable husk, engulfed in a raging inferno. Flames licked greedily at every surface, turning the once pristine vehicle into a molten, twisting mass. The sheer intensity of the blaze made any approach seem suicidal, yet a frantic, desperate energy surged through the small group of witnesses. Paul, Roger, Antonio screamed, his voice raw with terror, even as he knew, deep in his gut, that no human could survive such a conflagration. He and Jim, along with others, grabbed fire extinguishers from nearby businesses, their movements clumsy with adrenaline and shock. They aimed the feeble streams of white foam at the monstrous flames, knowing it was a futile gesture, yet driven by an instinct to do something, anything, to fight back against the overwhelming destruction. The foam hissed and evaporated instantly in the face of the inferno, offering no respite, no hope. The wails of approaching sirens, still distant but growing louder, began to cut through the cacophony of crackling flames and anguished cries. The flashing lights of emergency vehicles painted the smoke-filled air in strobing reds and blues, adding to the surreal horror of the scene. First responders, arriving to the chaos, moved with a grim efficiency, but even their trained eyes conveyed the profound helplessness of the situation. There was no reaching the vehicle, no possibility of rescue. The fire was too intense, too all-consuming. Antonio Holmes fell back, choking on the smoke, his face streaked with tears and soot. He stared at the inferno, his mind grappling with the impossible reality. The car, his friends, everything was being consumed. Jim Thorpe stood beside him, his shoulders slumped, the empty fire extinguisher dangling uselessly from his hand. The initial frantic energy gave way to a profound, crushing grief. Disbelief warred with the stark, horrific evidence before their eyes. The dream of a charitable afternoon, the joy of shared passion, had dissolved into a nightmare of smoke and ashes. The frantic helplessness in the face of insurmountable tragedy was a palpable weight, pressing down on every soul gathered there, leaving them to bear witness to an ending no one could have ever foreseen. The air tasted of ash, the heat scorched their skin, and the image of the burning wreckage would forever be seared into their minds. It was a moment of absolute, devastating finality, a world irrevocably altered by fire and fate. The inferno roared, a terrible, hungry beast devouring metal and flesh. The wails of sirens, now a deafening crescendo, converged on Hercules Street, their flashing lights painting the plumes of black smoke in a macabre dance of red and blue. Firefighters, their faces grim and determined, scrambled from their trucks, grappling with hoses that snaked across the asphalt. The hiss and roar of water meeting fire created a new, terrifying symphony, steam rising in ghostly clouds as the battle against the blaze began. But even as the torrents of water struck, the fire seemed to cling stubbornly, a testament to the volatile fuels feeding its hunger. Antonio Holmes stood frozen, the acrid smoke burning his lungs, his eyes fixed on the twisted, burning wreckage. The screams had died, replaced by the crackle of flames and the urgent shouts of the responders. Jim Thorpe, beside him, had sunk to his knees, his head bowed, the weight of the moment crushing him. Disbelief, that cruelest of emotions, still clawed at their minds, warring with the stark, undeniable evidence of the inferno. How could two lives, so vibrant, so full of promise just moments before, be reduced to this? The heat was oppressive, the air thick with the scent of destruction, and a profound, suffocating helplessness settled over the small gathering of witnesses. There was nothing left to do but watch and mourn, as the fire slowly, reluctantly, began to yield to the relentless assault of water. The world had irrevocably shifted on its axis, and the aftershocks were just beginning to ripple outwards. As the last embers glowed, a grim, smoky silence descended upon Hercules Street. The fire was out, but the devastation was absolute. The Porsche Carrera GT was no more, merely a charred, twisted skeleton of metal, fused with the remnants of the light pole and the blackened stumps of trees. The air still hung heavy with the smell of ash and burnt things, a scent that would forever be associated with that terrible afternoon. The methodical work of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department began almost immediately, their yellow tape a stark, clinical boundary against the raw grief of the witnesses. Investigators moved with a quiet, practiced solemnity, their flashlights cutting through the deepening twilight, illuminating fragments of debris, shards of glass, and the grim reality of the scene. But the silence on Hercules Street was merely a prelude to a global roar. The first whispers began, then grew into a frantic clamor, propelled by the relentless current of social media. A tweet, a forum post, a breaking news alert, each one a tiny spark, igniting a wildfire of speculation and dread. By the morning of December 1st, a single, devastating truth had solidified: Paul Walker was dead. Kristen Casey, Paul's publicist, found herself caught in the eye of an unprecedented storm. Her phone, a lifeline to the world, had become a conduit for an avalanche of inquiries, each one demanding confirmation, demanding answers. The initial calls were from friends, then colleagues, then the relentless media machine. Her voice, usually calm and composed, trembled as she relayed the unimaginable. The official statement, carefully worded, yet stark in its finality, was released, confirming the tragic news. It is with a truly heavy heart that we must confirm Paul Walker passed away today in a tragic car accident. The words, once typed, flew across continents, carried on the invisible waves of the internet, amplified by television screens and radio waves. The world reacted with a collective gasp of disbelief. For countless fans, Paul Walker wasn't just an actor, he was Brian O'Connor, the earnest, blue-eyed hero who had raced into their hearts. He was the embodiment of California cool, a symbol of speed, loyalty, and an unassuming goodness. The news hit like a physical blow, sending shockwaves through homes, offices, and film sets alike. The internet, usually a cacophony of fleeting opinions, transformed into a vast, somber memorial. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe, a digital ocean of sorrow. Profile pictures changed to black, heartfelt messages flooded timelines, and the iconic images of Paul Walker, smiling, surfing, driving, flickered across screens, now imbued with a heartbreaking poignancy. For his Fast Furious family, the news was not just a public tragedy, but a deeply personal wound. Tyrese Gibson, a man of profound emotion, felt the earth tilt beneath him. The phone call, the hushed, disbelieving voice on the other end, was a blur. He remembered the sudden coldness that gripped him, the immediate, visceral denial. No, not Paul, not my brother. He couldn't reconcile the vibrant, life-loving man he had just seen with the stark reality of the news. His mind reeled, replaying countless memories, shared laughs on set, late-night talks, the easy camaraderie that had cemented their bond beyond mere co-stars. The grief was a physical ache, a tightening in his chest that made it difficult to breathe. He imagined the scene, the fire, and a wave of nausea swept over him. Vin Diesel, a man who often referred to Paul as his brother, was utterly devastated. The news reached him with a brutal swiftness, tearing through the protective facade he often presented to the world. He retreated into a stunned silence, the bustling set of Fast and Furious 7 suddenly feeling hollow and meaningless. Paul wasn't just a colleague, he was family, a confidant, a steady presence in a turbulent industry. The weight of their shared history, the years spent building a franchise, a brotherhood, now pressed down on him with unbearable force. He found himself replaying their last conversation, searching for some hidden meaning, some final word that might offer solace, but there was only the crushing realization that there would be no more. The future of the franchise, the very fabric of their cinematic family, seemed to unravel in the face of this unimaginable loss. The entertainment industry, a world often criticized for its superficiality, paused in collective mourning, recognizing the loss of not just a star, but a genuinely good man. The wave of profound sadness rippled across the globe, a somber testament to the quiet impact Paul Walker had made. 2 days later, on December 3rd, the emotional storm still raged across the public consciousness, but in the sterile, hushed environment of the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, a different kind of work was underway. Here, amidst the clinical efficiency and the faint, ever-present scent of antiseptic, objective facts were meticulously sought, standing in stark contrast to the torrent of subjective sorrow that gripped the world. The air was cool, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh, unforgiving glare on stainless steel surfaces and official documents. Dr. Lakshmanan Satyavajaswaran, the chief medical examiner, and his team moved with a practiced gravity. Their task was grim, yet essential, to officially identify the victims of the catastrophic crash and to determine, with irrefutable scientific precision, the cause and manner of their deaths. The identities of Paul Walker and Roger Rodas, though widely presumed, needed formal, legal confirmation, a process that involved dental records and other forensic markers. The confirmation, when it came, was delivered with a somber professionalism, echoing the public's worst fears. The initial findings were stark, brutal in their clarity. Both Paul Walker and Roger Rodas had succumbed to traumatic and thermal injuries. The phrase, clinical and precise, painted a horrifying picture. The sheer, crushing force of the impact, the immediate, devastating trauma inflicted upon their bodies, followed by the unimaginable agony of the fire. The thermal injuries indicated that they were alive, at least for a brief, agonizing moment, after the crash but before the inferno consumed the vehicle. This detail, whispered among those privy to the reports, added another layer of profound horror to the tragedy, a chilling detail that would haunt the imaginations of those who loved them. The investigation was meticulous, a painstaking reconstruction of the final moments. Every fragment of the wreckage, every piece of evidence from the crash site, was collected, catalogued, and analyzed. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the coroner's office worked in tandem, driven by the immense public scrutiny and the sheer magnitude of the loss. Toxicology reports were ordered, a standard procedure in fatal accidents, to determine if any substances might have contributed to the crash. The process was slow, methodical, a deliberate unpicking of a horrific puzzle. The psychological state within these offices was one of analytical detachment, a necessary shield against the overwhelming emotion of the case. Yet, even for seasoned professionals, the high profile of the victims, the global outpouring of grief, and the brutal nature of the deaths added an undeniable layer of pressure. Every decision, every finding, would be scrutinized, dissected, and debated in the public forum. The investigators were acutely aware that they were not just dealing with statistics. They were dealing with the shattered lives of two men, and the profound sorrow of their families and millions of fans. The cool, quiet hum of the ventilation system was the only constant sound, a stark counterpoint to the raging storm of grief outside. The objective facts, once established, would be laid bare, a stark and unforgiving truth amidst the subjective sorrow. 2 days later, on December 5th, Hercules Street had transformed. The yellow police tape was gone, replaced by a sea of humanity. Thousands of fans, drawn by an invisible current of shared grief, converged on the accident site, transforming the desolate stretch of road into a vibrant, yet profoundly sorrowful, makeshift memorial. The air, once thick with the stench of smoke, now carried the sweet, melancholic perfume of countless candles, their flickering flames dancing in the gentle Santa Clarita breeze. There were wilting flowers of every hue, their petals soft against the cold asphalt, interspersed with handwritten notes, framed photographs of Paul, and even toy cars, miniature tributes to the man who had brought the thrill of speed to so many. The murmur of the crowd was a low, reverent hum, punctuated by the quiet sniffles of mourners and the occasional, hushed prayer. Strangers embraced, finding solace in their shared sorrow, their faces etched with a common pain. The atmosphere was thick with a collective outpouring of love and loss, a communal expression of grief that transcended age, race, and nationality. It was a testament to the quiet, unassuming impact Paul Walker had made on so many lives. Among the sea of grieving faces, Paul's Fast Furious family arrived, their own anguish raw and visible. Vin Diesel, his usual stoic demeanor shattered, moved through the crowd like a man in a daze. His eyes, usually fierce and commanding, were now red-rimmed and filled with an unbearable sadness. He leaned against a utility pole near the crash site, the weight of the world seemingly on his shoulders, unable to comprehend the void Paul had left. He spoke softly, his voice thick with emotion, to the gathered fans, thanking them for their love, for their presence, for honoring his brother. His words were not a speech, but a raw, unfiltered outpouring of a broken heart. "He's in a better place than we are," he whispered, his voice cracking, "and we miss him." Tyrese Gibson, unable to contain his grief, had visited the site days earlier, breaking down in tears, leaving a single white rose. Now, he returned, his face a mask of profound sorrow, his eyes scanning the tributes, each one a painful reminder of what was lost. He embraced fans, offering and receiving comfort, his heart heavy with the impossible task of coming to terms with his friend's sudden absence. The future of the franchise, a juggernaut of global entertainment, felt suddenly fragile, its heart ripped out. How could they continue without Brian O'Connor, without Paul? The question hung heavy in the air, unspoken but universally understood. The psychological state of these close friends was one of profound heartbreak, bewilderment, and a frantic search for solace. They were attempting to find some anchor in the shared remembrance, some strength in the collective support of the fans. But the truth was, they were adrift, navigating a sea of grief without their captain. The scent of burning candles mingled with the lingering smell of exhaust fumes from cars that revved their engines in tribute, a mournful roar that echoed the emptiness in their souls. It was a public and private struggle, a desperate attempt to reconcile the vibrant memory of Paul Walker with the stark, devastating reality of his absence. As the new year dawned, January of 2014 brought with it not a sense of renewal, but a deepening layer of scrutiny over the tragedy. The initial shock had begun to recede, replaced by a relentless demand for answers. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the California Highway Patrol, under immense public and media pressure, began to release preliminary findings from their investigation into the fatal crash. The atmosphere surrounding these announcements was scrutinizing, almost predatory, each word weighed, each detail dissected. The initial reports pointed unequivocally to one primary factor: speed. Investigators, utilizing advanced forensic techniques and witness statements, estimated that the Porsche Carrera GT had been traveling at an alarming rate, somewhere between 80 and 93 miles per hour, just before Roger Rodas lost control. This was significantly faster than the posted 45 miles per hour speed limit on Hercules Street. The dry, technical language of the reports spoke of tire marks, impact angles, and kinetic energy, all converging on the conclusion that excessive speed was the direct catalyst for the catastrophic loss of control. The road conditions were also mentioned, noting the presence of raised pavement markers, or bots dots, which could have contributed to the car losing traction at such high velocities. However, even as these official pronouncements solidified, a counter-narrative began to emerge, quietly at first, then with increasing insistence, from the grieving families. For the Walkers and the Rodases, the explanation of just speed felt profoundly unsatisfying, almost dismissive. They knew Roger Rodas to be a highly skilled and experienced driver, intimately familiar with high-performance vehicles, particularly this specific Porsche. Paul Walker, too, was no stranger to speed, having spent decades portraying a street racer on screen and pursuing his passion for cars off-screen. The idea that a simple misjudgment of speed was the sole culprit felt too simplistic, too convenient. Questions began to surface, whispered at first, then openly articulated by family representatives and attorneys. What about the vehicle's integrity? The Porsche Carrera GT was a notoriously powerful and demanding car, a limited production supercar designed for track performance. Were there inherent design flaws that made it uniquely susceptible to losing control, particularly at high speeds? What about the age of the tires? While the official report mentioned it as a contributing factor, the families wondered if it was more than just a factor. Could it have been a critical flaw? The road conditions, too, came under intense scrutiny. Were the bots dots a known hazard on that particular stretch of road, especially for high-performance vehicles? The atmosphere became increasingly contentious, an emerging conflict between the seemingly definitive official findings and the profound, persistent doubts of those closest to the victims. Cheryl Walker, Paul's mother, and Christine Rodas, Roger's widow, felt a growing sense of unease. Their psychological state shifted from raw grief to a determined skepticism. They were not just mourning, they were seeking truth, a deeper understanding that went beyond the surface-level explanation. They felt, instinctively, that there was more to the story, a hidden complexity beneath the tragic simplicity of Speed. They were resolute, preparing themselves for a protracted fight for answers, for a vindication of their loved ones that the initial reports simply did not provide. The quiet hum of legal machinery, though not yet fully engaged, began to stir in the background, signaling a nascent challenge to the official narrative. March of 2014 arrived, bringing with it the much-anticipated official accident report, a document that was meant to provide definitive closure to the tragic death of Paul Walker and Roger Rodas. The report, painstakingly compiled by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the California Highway Patrol, was released to a world hungry for final answers. Its findings reiterated, with unwavering certainty, the initial conclusions. Excessive speed and the age of the tires were the primary contributing factors. The car, it stated, was traveling at speeds between 80 and 93 miles per hour at the moment of impact, a velocity far exceeding the legal limit for that stretch of road. The tires, though not explicitly defective, were noted to be 9 years old, a factor that could have compromised their grip and handling capabilities at extreme speeds. However, the report contained another crucial, and for the families, deeply troubling assertion. It explicitly stated no mechanical failure. This detail, delivered with the dry authority of official investigation, was intended to put to rest any speculation about the vehicle itself being at fault. The Porsche Carrera GT, in the eyes of the official report, was not inherently flawed. The responsibility, it implied, lay squarely with the circumstances of the drive and the choices made within it. For the Walker and Rodas families, the report felt definitive yet profoundly unsatisfying. The sense of official closure it attempted to convey clashed violently with their persistent personal questions and their growing conviction that a deeper, secret, or flaw in the vehicle's design might have played a crucial, perhaps even decisive, role. They had absorbed the initial reports, wrestled with the concept of speed, but the absolute dismissal of mechanical failure struck them as an incomplete, perhaps even unjust, conclusion. Cheryl Walker, her heart still aching with the loss of her son, found herself poring over the technical jargon of the report, her mind searching for loopholes, for nuances, for anything that could explain the inexplicable. She knew Paul, knew his caution and respect for powerful machines. The image of him recklessly speeding to his death did not align with the man she knew. Christine Rodas, Roger's widow, felt a similar surge of disbelief and indignation. Roger was a professional, a meticulous driver. She could not accept that he alone was responsible for such a catastrophic failure. Their psychological state had shifted from mere skepticism to a resolute determination. The report, rather than offering peace, had ignited a fierce resolve. They felt dismissed, their grief and intuition brushed aside by technicalities. The absence of any acknowledgement of potential vehicle defects only strengthened their conviction that something was being overlooked, or worse, deliberately downplayed. The phrase, "no mechanical failure," echoed in their minds, a hollow, unsatisfying pronouncement that felt like an injustice. The quiet hum of legal discussions, which had begun in January, now intensified, growing into a purposeful drone. Meetings with attorneys, Jeff Milam for Meadow Walker and a separate team for Christine Rodas, became more frequent, more strategic. The families were no longer just seeking answers, they were preparing for a protracted fight for truth and accountability. The official report, meant to be the end of the investigative road, had instead become the starting gun for a new, arduous journey, a legal battle against a powerful automotive manufacturer. The air in these hushed legal consultations was thick with a new kind of tension, the cold, calculated resolve to challenge a narrative that felt incomplete, and to seek justice for the men they had lost. The stage was set for a dramatic, deeply personal confrontation, driven by sorrow and an unwavering demand for what they believed was the true story of that fateful day. The spring of 2015 brought with it a different kind of thaw, not just in the lingering chill of winter but in the frozen landscape of grief that had gripped Meadow Walker's young life. For nearly 2 years, the official narrative of her father's death had been a bitter pill, a stark, unsatisfying explanation that whispered of speed and driver error, yet left a vast, aching chasm of unanswered questions in its wake. The official report, with its clipped, clinical pronouncements, had felt like a dismissal, a callous simplification of a tragedy that had ripped her world apart. But Meadow, though young, carried within her a quiet strength, a resilience inherited from the father she adored. Her sorrow, once a crushing, incapacitating weight, had begun to coalesce into a formidable resolve. She had spent countless hours in the quiet solitude of her thoughts, replaying memories, piecing together fragments of conversations, all while the unsettling refrain of "no mechanical failure" echoed mockingly in her mind. Her father had been a man of meticulous detail, a connoisseur of performance vehicles, but also a person who held life, his own and others, in profound reverence. The idea that he, or Roger, would have simply, carelessly, driven to their demise felt fundamentally wrong, a distortion of the men she knew. It was this unwavering conviction, this deep-seated belief that there was more to the story, that propelled her forward. By September of 2015, Meadow, guided by the steady hand of her attorney, Jeff Milam, was ready to challenge the monolithic authority of official pronouncements. Milam was a man of quiet gravitas, his voice calm yet imbued with an unyielding determination. He had listened to Meadow, truly listened, to the nuances of her grief and the unshakable certainty in her heart. He understood that this was not merely about compensation, it was about vindication, about forcing a powerful corporation to confront the possibility that their product, a revered icon of automotive engineering, might bear a hidden, fatal flaw. The legal documents, crisp and official, were prepared with painstaking precision. The language was precise, cold, and utterly devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the raw, pulsating grief that fueled their creation. Meadow Walker, through her legal counsel, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Porsche. The allegations were damning, meticulously researched, and aimed directly at the heart of the Carrera GT's design. It wasn't just speed, they contended, it was the car itself. The lawsuit alleged multiple design defects that, they argued, had directly contributed to her father's death. Milam's arguments laid bare a chilling hypothesis. The Carrera GT, they claimed, lacked crucial safety features that were standard in other Porsche models, features that could have either prevented the accident or, at the very least, offered a chance of survival. They spoke of a defective stability control system that failed to correct the car's swerve, a flaw that left the powerful machine dangerously unstable at high speeds. They highlighted a lack of adequate side impact protection, claiming that the car's design essentially turned it into a death trap in the event of a collision. And perhaps most damningly, they pointed to a faulty fuel line system that, upon impact, had ruptured, ensuring the immediate, catastrophic fire that had consumed the vehicle and its occupants. The inferno, they argued, was not an unavoidable consequence but a preventable outcome of a flawed design. For Meadow, the act of filing the lawsuit was a deeply emotional one. It was a formal declaration of war, a public challenge to the narrative that had sought to close the book on her father's life with such brutal simplicity. There was a profound sorrow in having to dissect the mechanics of his death in such a public and adversarial manner, but beneath that sorrow was an unshakable resolve. She pictured her father, his easy smile, the warmth of his embrace, and that image fueled her. This was her way of fighting for him, of ensuring that his memory was not tarnished by an incomplete truth. She was channeling her grief, not into despair, but into a relentless pursuit of answers and accountability, a daughter's unwavering devotion transformed into a legal crusade. The air in the legal offices, usually hushed and formal, now hummed with a quiet tension, the gravity of the accusations hanging heavy, a new chapter of the tragedy unfolding not on the asphalt, but in the cold, unyielding halls of justice. Just 2 months later, in November of 2015, the legal pressure on Porsche intensified dramatically. Christine Rodas, Roger Rodas's widow, having navigated her own agonizing journey through grief and unanswered questions, also took a decisive step. Her lawsuit, filed separately but running on a parallel track to Meadow Walker's, echoed many of the same foundational concerns, yet brought forth additional, specific allegations that painted an even darker picture of the Porsche Carrera GT's integrity. Christine had endured a different, yet equally devastating, form of public scrutiny. While Paul Walker's fame ensured a global outpouring of grief, Roger Rodas, though a respected businessman and skilled driver, remained largely in the shadow of his celebrity friend. Yet, for Christine, the loss was no less profound, the questions no less insistent. She had lived with Roger's passion for cars, his meticulous attention to detail, and his unwavering professionalism behind the wheel. The official report, with its emphasis on speed, had felt like an indictment, subtly shifting blame onto her husband, a man she knew to be responsible and highly capable. This, she could not abide. Her legal team, driven by Christine's unwavering conviction, meticulously assembled their own case. They weren't merely riding the coattails of the Walker lawsuit. They had conducted their own extensive investigations, consulting with independent automotive experts and engineers. Their lawsuit, like Meadows', argued that the Carrera GT suffered from fundamental design flaws. But Christine's suit honed in with particular intensity on a defective suspension system. They alleged that the car's suspension, rather than providing stability, was inherently unstable, especially when subjected to the kind of stresses experienced during high-speed cornering or sudden maneuvers. This defect, they argued, made the vehicle prone to losing control, even in the hands of an experienced driver like Roger. Furthermore, Christine's legal action also highlighted the lack of a proper racing fuel cell, a safety feature commonly found in other high-performance vehicles designed for track use. They claimed that the standard fuel tank's placement and design made it vulnerable to rupture upon impact, directly contributing to the catastrophic fire that had claimed both men's lives. The absence of these critical safety measures, they contended, transformed a supposed supercar into a ticking time bomb, a vehicle that prioritized raw power and aesthetic appeal over the fundamental safety of its occupants. The filing of Christine Rodas's lawsuit sent another tremor through the automotive world. It was no longer a single, grieving family making accusations. It was a united front, two deeply wounded families, independently yet cohesively, challenging the engineering prowess and safety standards of a globally renowned manufacturer. The atmosphere around Porsche AG and Porsche North America shifted from defensive posturing to a more acute sense of legal vulnerability. The combined weight of these lawsuits, each meticulously detailing alleged flaws, created an undeniable legal pressure, threatening not just financial penalties but a significant blow to the company's carefully cultivated reputation for precision and safety. Christine's psychological state was one of persistent grievance, intertwined with a fierce determination to clear her husband's name. Her pursuit of justice was not just for financial recompense, but for the moral vindication of Roger, to demonstrate that his skill and judgment had not been the sole, or even primary, cause of the crash. She sought to hold the manufacturer responsible, to ensure that no other family would suffer a similar, preventable tragedy. The legal battle was arduous, emotionally draining, but for Christine, it was a necessary fight, a way to honor Roger's memory and confront the powerful forces she believed had contributed to his untimely death. The quiet resolve of two families, bound by shared sorrow and a relentless pursuit of truth, had transformed into a formidable challenge against an automotive titan. The ensuing year, 2016, became a crucible of legal combat, a protracted, often grueling, period of depositions, expert testimonies, and relentless negotiations. The hallowed halls of justice, typically cold and impersonal, were imbued with the raw, lingering pain of the Rodas and Walker families. For Meadow, the process was an emotional gauntlet. She sat through endless meetings, listened to the dispassionate analysis of crash dynamics, and absorbed the chilling details of the fire, each piece of evidence a fresh wound. Her attorney, Jeff Milam, worked tirelessly, his sharp legal mind dissecting every document, every expert opinion, building a formidable case against Porsche. The heart of the legal proceedings lay in the clash of expert testimonies. Porsche, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, marshaled its own formidable array of engineers, safety experts, and accident reconstructionists. They steadfastly maintained that the Carrera GT was a meticulously engineered vehicle, a high-performance machine designed for discerning drivers, and that the accident was solely attributable to excessive speed and the age of the tires. Their experts presented complex simulations, detailed analyses of crash forces, and arguments about driver responsibility, aiming to deflect any blame from the vehicle's design. Conversely, the legal teams for Meadow Walker and Christine Rodas brought forth their own experts, independent automotive engineers, safety consultants, and former racing drivers. These experts presented counter-arguments, meticulously detailing the alleged design flaws, the lack of a proper electronic stability control system, the inadequate side impact protection, and crucially, the vulnerability of the fuel system. They argued that while speed was undoubtedly a factor, a safer designed car would have either mitigated the crash or, more importantly, prevented the post-impact fire that proved fatal. The courtroom, or more often, the conference rooms where depositions took place, became a battleground of scientific data, engineering principles, and competing narratives, each side striving to establish their version of the truth. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a palpable sense of adversarial determination. The air often smelled of stale coffee, old paper, and the faint, metallic tang of stress. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. The legal costs mounted, the emotional toll deepened. For Christine Rodas, the process was equally taxing. She relived the horror of that day through technical diagrams and expert reports, her private grief laid bare in the cold light of legal scrutiny. She carried the additional burden of defending Roger's driving ability, ensuring that his legacy as a skilled and responsible individual was not overshadowed by the tragedy. Ultimately, after years of this intense legal struggle, the decision was made to seek resolution outside of the courtroom. The prospect of a prolonged, public trial, with its inherent uncertainties and the emotional strain it would continue to inflict on both families, weighed heavily. In a quiet, almost anticlimactic turn, both the Rodas and Walker lawsuits against Porsche were settled out of court. The terms of these settlements, as is customary in such high-profile cases, remained strictly confidential. No grand pronouncements were made, no definitive admissions of fault publicly declared by Porsche. The legal battle simply ceased, a quiet agreement reached behind closed doors. This confidential resolution left the public to speculate endlessly. What had the settlements revealed? What concessions, if any, had Porsche made? Had the families achieved a measure of justice that acknowledged design flaws, even if not publicly? The absence of transparent findings fueled a lingering sense of ambiguity, a quiet dissatisfaction among those who had followed the case with bated breath, hoping for a definitive, secret, to be revealed about the Carrera GT's safety. For the families, while the settlements offered a pragmatic form of closure and financial security, the deeper questions about the car's inherent safety and the exact sequence of events leading to the fire remained shrouded in the veil of confidentiality. They were weary, having endured a long and painful fight, accepting a private resolution while the public's thirst for absolute clarity remained unquenched. The air, after the long legal storm, was still, but carried the faint, indelible scent of unanswered questions. As the calendar pages turned past 2016 and into 2017 and beyond, the echoes of Paul Walker's life, and the profound void left by his death, began to manifest in new, enduring forms. For Meadow Walker, the arduous legal battle, though privately settled, had been a transformative journey. Her grief, once a raw, debilitating force, had slowly, organically, begun to transmute into a powerful catalyst for purpose. She emerged from the legal crucible with a quiet strength, a fierce determination to honor her father's memory not through sorrow, but through action. In 2015, on what would have been her father's 42nd birthday, Meadow officially established the Paul Walker Foundation. It was a deeply personal endeavor, born from a desire to continue the philanthropic spirit that had so defined her father's later years. The foundation's mission resonated deeply with Paul's passions: marine science education, ocean conservation, and providing grants to young people pursuing these fields. Meadow envisioned it as a living legacy, a tangible extension of his love for the ocean and his unwavering belief in the power of education and environmental stewardship. The foundation's logo, a stylized wave, subtly intertwined with the initials, PW, became a symbol of her dedication. She immersed herself in its work, attending events, speaking about ocean health, and engaging with young scientists, her father's spirit palpable in every initiative. The atmosphere around the foundation was one of enduring hope, a phoenix rising from the ashes of tragedy, transforming grief into lasting purpose. Concurrently, Paul's brothers, Cody and Caleb Walker, stepped up to ensure that Reach Out Worldwide, the disaster relief charity he had founded, continued its vital work. The organization, a testament to Paul's compassionate heart, had faced an uncertain future after his death. But Cody and Caleb, united in their love for their brother and their commitment to his vision, took up the mantle. They worked tirelessly, navigating the complex logistics of disaster response, coordinating volunteers, and raising funds. They traveled to disaster zones, just as Paul had, bringing immediate aid and comfort to communities devastated by natural calamities. The sight of them, Paul's younger brothers, carrying forward his humanitarian torch, was a poignant and powerful affirmation that his legacy of compassion and selflessness would not only endure but flourish. The sound of their voices, echoing Paul's own dedication, filled the halls where ROWW meetings were held, a constant reminder of the profound impact one man's vision could have. And then, there was the enduring impact of the Fast Furious films. The franchise, which had seemed irrevocably shattered by Paul's death, found a way to carry on, albeit with a profound sense of bittersweet remembrance. Furious 7, the film he was actively working on at the time of his death, became a global phenomenon, a heartfelt tribute to Paul. Cody and Caleb, bearing an uncanny resemblance to their brother, stepped in to help complete his remaining scenes, a testament to family and cinematic ingenuity. The final scene, where Brian O'Connor and Dominic Toretto drive their separate ways, accompanied by Wiz Khalifa's poignant, "See You Again," became an iconic, tear-inducing farewell, a cinematic eulogy that resonated with millions. The films that followed continued to honor Paul's memory, weaving his character into the narrative through subtle references and a palpable sense of his presence. The roar of the engines, the thrill of the chase, the unbreakable bond of family, these elements, so central to the franchise, now carried an added layer of meaning, a constant, loving homage to the man who had brought Brian O'Connor to life. The atmosphere surrounding the franchise was one of enduring celebration, intertwined with an almost sacred reverence for the lost brother. Meadows' dedication, Cody and Caleb's commitment, and the ongoing reverence of the Fast Furious films ensured that Paul Walker's spirit of compassion, environmentalism, and familial love would continue to inspire. His legacy was not merely a collection of memories but a living, breathing force, a testament to a life well lived and a profound impact that transcended the boundaries of fame and mortality. In the present day, a decade removed from that catastrophic afternoon on Hercules Street, the secret death of Paul Walker continues to resonate, a complex tapestry woven with threads of public grief, legal battles, and lingering questions. The silence that followed the confidential settlements between the Walker and Rhoda's families and Porsche never truly filled the void of definitive answers. The questions persist, whispered in online forums, debated among automotive enthusiasts, and pondered by those who still feel the sting of his absence. Was the Porsche Carrera GT, a marvel of German engineering, truly a flawless machine, or did it harbor inherent design defects that turned a high-speed accident into an inescapable inferno? The official reports, pointing to speed and tire age, stand in stark contrast to the compelling allegations of a defective stability control, inadequate side impact protection, and a vulnerable fuel system. The truth, in its entirety, remains elusive, shrouded in the ambiguity of out-of-court resolutions and the weight of corporate discretion. The exact moments leading to the crash, the precise inputs, the subtle shift in road conditions, the car's nuanced reaction to extreme forces are still subjects of conjecture, forever lost to the violence of the impact and the consuming flames. The emotional toll on those left behind remains a palpable force. Cheryl Walker, Paul's mother, still carries the quiet ache of a parent who has outlived her child, a pain that time can soften but never truly erase. Meadow, now a young woman, lives with the dual legacy of her father's fame and his tragic end, her strength forged in the crucible of loss, her life dedicated to honoring his memory. His brothers, Cody and Caleb, continue their work with ROWW, their voices echoing Paul's, their hands carrying on his mission, each act of charity a silent conversation with the brother they miss. Vin Diesel and Tyrese Gibson, his Fast Furious brothers, still speak of him with a profound reverence, their bond unbroken by death, his presence a guiding force in their cinematic family. Paul Walker's life and death serve as a poignant reminder of fleeting mortality, a stark illustration of how quickly even the most vibrant existence can be extinguished. Yet, paradoxically, his passing has only amplified the enduring power of his legacy. He was more than Brian O'Connor, he was a dedicated father, a passionate humanitarian, an environmental advocate, and a man of genuine warmth and humility. His humanitarian efforts through ROWW continue to save lives and bring comfort in the face of global disasters, a testament to his altruistic spirit. His love for the ocean, now championed by the Paul Walker Foundation, inspires new generations to protect the fragile beauty of our planet. The lingering sense of mystery surrounding his secret death, the questions about the car, the crash, the fire ensures that his story will continue to be told, analyzed, and contemplated. But beyond the mechanics of the tragedy, what truly endures is the profound impact of Paul Walker's existence. A life well lived, a spirit of generosity that continues to ripple outwards, and a legacy that transcends the silver screen, reminding us all of the profound difference one person can make, both on screen and through the quiet, steadfast power of compassion. The memory of his blue eyes, his ready smile, and his unwavering heart continues to shine, a beacon against the shadow of his untimely departure, a testament to a life that, though cut short, remains eternally vibrant.